Where's my heart? Oh, it's good. Alright, we good. We Gucci. We Gucci like the bandana. Oh, wait, it's probably. Yeah. Yoink. Yoki. Yoki. Ugh. There we go. How does that look on my head? Actually, not terrible. It highlights my hair. But I want to have this out of my face. There we go. That's Gucci. That's Gucci. Alright. Let me share this out. Ooh, I am just 12 minutes late. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's pretty bad, but it's not that bad. Not that bad considering I was like super sick last week. So I think we're doing pretty good. I think we're doing pretty damn good. Hey, what's good, Josiah? I'm doing way better than I was last week. I can tell you that. Oh man. I like could not stream for the life of me. I couldn't do anything really. Also sucked that like my shop didn't get their comics last week, so I was backed up. But I mean that was fine because I couldn't go anywhere, you know. I did miss out on a concert last week, so that really sucked. But it was for a band I've seen live already, so it wasn't that broken up about it. But what's up, man? How you doing? Hey, what's good, Tevya? What have you guys been reading? It's a pretty stacked week this week. Seen Guardians 3? No, shut up! I haven't seen it yet. I'm gonna see it this weekend. I couldn't see it this past weekend. I was sick and then I ended up having to work to make up hours, but I am gonna see it hopefully this Saturday. Happy Free Comic Book Day. Yeah, man. What did you get? Because I was a dumbass. I just like left my free books. Like, I got them, I left them in public, and then they got snatched up. That's no one's fault but mine. I thought my books were like put behind the counter or something. Nope. Just they got snatched up. So I don't have my free books. And one of the free books that I did have was the Spider-Man PS5, or I guess Spider-Man 2 PS5 like prequel. I just don't have it now. I'm glad I got a chance to read it before it got like yoinked though. That was cool. It's pretty interesting setting up J. Jonah Jameson being the editor, publisher of the Daily Bugle again. Even if I'm not really a big fan of the PS4 version of J. Jonah, why is that name always so hard? J. Jonah Jameson. Is it still considered stealing if the books are free? Nah, that's the worst part about it. That's why it's an L on my part. But yeah, no, like I don't think I said this in the stream at all, like, or I guess when I was streaming Marvel Spider-Man. As funny as I think JJ being Alex Jones is, it does kind of suck that character's just been like reduced to an Alex Jones parody. I think you could do a lot more with him outside of that. But I mean, it is what it is. That's the take that the PS4 games have, and I'm interested to see what they do with JJ being like the publisher of the Bugle again in the sequel. So, yeah, we'll see how that turns out. Especially some of those rumors of Eddie Brock being a playable character, but not Venom being a playable character, which is weird. But you know, we'll see. We'll see. They're setting up some interesting Bugle status quo stuff for the Spider-Man video game sequel, which should be called Spider-Man. Should be called Spider-Man. Don't know why it's not called Spider-Man. You have 2 Spider-Man. We don't need another This is the 3rd Spider-Man 2 game we've gotten in the past 20 years. Like, nah, that's a whole rant though. Any opinion on Mortal Kombat 12 being a reboot for that game franchise? Interesting. I did not know that it was going to be a reboot. I guess my lights obviously did. They're in desperate need of a reboot, but... Huh. Is that confirmed? Let me see. Interesting. So it's a lot of like teases, but I'm gonna sit this one in the rumor category right now. And Liu Kang did kind of reboot the timeline in MK11. That's a really fun game. I haven't beaten it yet, but it's a really fun game. Alright. Let me share this out again. Alright. Oh, there's a teaser that came out today? Okay. I was at work. I like barely get a chance to look at anything while I'm at work. Oh, I guess we'll just get the books that I got this week. I got pretty hefty, got a hefty lot here. So yeah, let's start with like the most surprising one for me, because I did not expect to enjoy this like to any degree, but like, oh my god, like, oh my god. And I read some of this like months ago, but I finally broke down and just bought the whole thing, and it is The Flash, The Fastest Man Alive. It's the prequel to a movie that I'm still not sure I am excited to see, like genuinely, or just like have like a cautious, you know, let's see where this weird shit goes kind of mentality regarding it. But regardless of whether the movie is like up my alley or not, this comic series definitely is. In fact, I feel confident in saying this is what I wanted the movie to be. Like, this right here is what I wanted in a Flash movie. Even with Ezra Miller, you know, still, I like how it's just, it's rooted in the DCEU, but it takes a lot of, like, Silver and Bronze Age Flash characters. Oh, well, no, Tar Pit's not really a Bronze Age character. That's a Jeff Johns creation, I think. But it takes a lot of those, like, it takes a lot of comic booky elements of the Flash, and doesn't even necessarily like try to ground them in a more cinematic kind of tone. Okay, the Top is in this, right? This is issue 3. The Top is in this, and his plan is to have a bunch of like dreidel spinning tops just destroy the city, and he just straight up looks like the Top from the comics. this is the Flash that I wanted on film. Like, really, it is. Also, this, like, all the art confirms that they CGI'd the hell out of the neck because there was supposed to be a collar there, which I think that suit would look better with a collar, but, you know, I guess they wanted to CG it out for whatever reason. But the art is really cool. It changes issue to issue. But yeah, guys, this is it's so weird. Like, I enjoyed this so much, and I typically just kind of go into these like movie prequel comics, just kind of going like, this is dumb. But, you know, I'm sure the art's pretty fun, or decent at least. There's going to be, like, a cool upstart artist. That's how I feel, that's how I feel with where a lot of the MCU comics, or I guess MCU prequel comics, or what they turned into. Because it started out pretty good. Like, I really liked the Iron Man movie comics, and the Hulk prequel comics were really good, too. But somewhere along the lines, the MCU... Thank you. But somewhere along the lines, the MCU prequel comics just kind of... They turned into, like, sludge that you didn't really feel like you had to read. Yeah, it was kind of weird. This took me back to that. You know, this took me back to when, like, the MCU prequel comics were, like, fun and worth reading and, like, weren't necessarily... They weren't necessary, but they did enhance the experience, you know? I think, like, one of the big reasons I really like Iron Man 2 as much as I did is because the prequel comics, they fleshed out that world, like a world post-Iron Man, a world after Tony Stark, you know, rips off the Band-Aid and says, I am Iron Man, and blah, 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 unveils himself to the world. Why is talking so hard today? But... yeah, no, I like really, I enjoyed a lot of those movie tie-in comics before they had to turn to crap, and this was that. This is just a really cool prequel comic, and it's just a really fun Flash story. It does give me vibes that I don't necessarily want in regards to this movie being like an adaptation of one of my favorite characters in comics, but vibes that I've just kind of come to accept and, you know, be at peace with. The upcoming Flash movie does not look like it's going to be an adaptation of the Flash character out of the comics. It looks like it's going to be more so a riff on the CW TV show, you know? Kind of like how, you notice how Superman comics, right? Or really Superman anything throughout the 90s and 2000s, especially the 2000s, they were riffing heavily off of the Donner films to the point where it just kind of felt like the Donner films were like, that's canon Superman, that's the foundation for canon Superman, and everything after that has to be like retconned and retrofitted to fit the mold of Donner Superman, because that is Superman. I feel like the Flash is kind of turning into that. I feel like, you know, any Flash media that we get post the CW show is just going to be ripping off of the CW show. And I think the movie is like the like a really big indicator of that. This Flash movie just looks like a more sober second draft of the Flash season 1. So I mean, sure, all right, whatever. Not the Flash story I necessarily wanted on film, especially considering how I think the first season of the Flash at least did a pretty decent job with that material. But I mean, we'll see how it goes. At least going off these comics, I really like their. I like this universe's take on Barry Allen a lot, mainly because he doesn't need a team of 800 nerds yelling in his ear to do the one thing that he can do quite proficiently, which is run, Barry, run. But yeah, I don't know. I like this comic series a lot. It's really fun. The art is really cool. Yeah, they shift the art a lot. The first is Ferreira. I can't. His name isn't coming to me right now. But he's the guy who also drew Deadly Neighborhood Spider-Man. I think he's perfect for a character like the Flash. In fact, I think he's more appropriate for a character like the Flash. His art style is extremely kinetic. Like, just look at that. Look at all that. Maybe if you can see it. I'm not sure if my camera is doing it justice, but the name. Oh no, this is Ricardo. Oh, this is Ricardo Ortiz. Ooh, my bad. Oh no, Juan Ferreira does the cover. No, he does issue 2. Yeah, Juan Ferreira does issue 2. Sorry, but yeah, Ricardo Ortiz, his art style is like extremely kinetic. I would like to see like him do like the main Flash book at some point. Like, for real. It's kind of cartoony, but that's something I really kind of like about it. It's also extremely anime inspired, which I know some people might get all like and uppity about, but I personally think it looks really cool, and I think it fits for a character like the Flash. Like, dude, look at these action sequences like right here. This is just Barry punching a punching bag with Bruce in the Batcave. Tell me that's not badass. So, yeah, I don't know. All in all, I really enjoyed this. Really cool that it's being collected along for the release of the Flash movie. So yeah, it's like a fun, just cool Flash book to pick up, and yeah, I'm surprised I enjoyed it half as much as I did. Toby says I forgot the Flash miniseries was a thing. I think most people did. Still burnt out on Flashpoint. It's the only Flash story being adapted 24/7. Me too, man. I really think the Flash is like an extremely versatile character. It sucks that he's been pigeonholed, but I'm sure we can come out of it at some point. You know, I don't think it's gonna be like this forever. I'm more excited to read more Jeremy Adams Flash. Yeah, dude, I mean, by default, yeah. Like, of course. First of all, look, this is Barry Allen. It's cool, but it's not Wally. My boy Wally is the Flash. That's just how I feel about it. Next book I got this week, or I guess books I got this week, were The Ambassadors, issues 3 and 4. These are by Mark Miller. Issue 4 was drawn by Olivier Coipel, and I'm extremely familiar with Coipel. I think a lot of people are. Coipel's like one of those superstar Marvel artists who got big off of, I think, Thor. When they worked with JMS on Thor. That was like, what, 2009-ish? 7-ish? When was Siege? Is Siege 2010? Okay. So, Coipel, like, was doing Thor with JMS, like, before that. But Yeah, no, his artwork has like always been like peak to me, and he just keeps getting better as time goes on. I still don't know what to make of this book. A lot of it just kind of feels like it's coasting off the fact that it's Mark Miller, and I love Mark Miller. And it's just full of Mark Miller isms. But I can't say I quite know where it's going yet. And I only think it's six issues. And we're on issue 4. And issue 4 still feels like we're setting things up. I mean, the setup is cool. Like, I really like this whole bit with Yasmin and John Luke, her son, in issue 3. I really like the whole story with the priest in here in issue 4. But again, it is just a thing where I'm like, okay, oh, what's up, Supreme Omega? But it is a thing where I'm just like, all right, I don't want this to be another. What's that book with the Empress? I don't want this to be another Empress, where set up. Final issue. We resolve the entire narrative in like 3 pages. Like I don't want that to happen here. I'm not saying it will. I'm just saying it feels like it might. Because the whole premise of like, well, it's Willy Wonka, but with superpowers. That's a cool pitch. It's a cool premise, but we're still in the foundation? I don't know. I mean, it's pretty. Like it's pretty and it's well written. I'm enjoying the sightseeing. I'm just kind of, I don't know. We'll see where it goes. But again, still so far I'm really into it. But I mean, I'm a Mark Miller simp. I have been since I was reading Ultimates as a kid, when I probably shouldn't have been reading Ultimates. We're gonna be quite honest with that. But yeah, I'm down. I'm still down. So we'll see where it goes. Next book I picked up. Actually, let me take a break real quick. Let me answer. Hey, what's good, Arcus? How we living? Debbie says, personally, for me, while I am intrigued about the Flash movie, at the same time, though, I'm worried on how the Flash movie is going to turn out. If it is everything that celebrities and the internet are saying, then, like, I'm sure it'll be like a decent blockbuster movie. At this point, I don't think the Flash movie will be terrible. I think it'll just be, like, the worst it can be, I think, is just another comic book movie. Just another uninspired comic book movie. Which I guess would make the whole controversy surrounding Ezra Miller 1,000 times worse. Because, oh man, we got a generic comic book movie, and it stars a complete psychopath who faced no legal ramifications of his actions. So, I think that's the worst possible outcome there. But I mean, best case scenario, it's a really good movie and a well-polished version of season 1 of The Flash, which is what I think it will be. W says, or goes on to say, personally, for me, I care more about Wally West. Me too, but I think the problem that the DCEU has is that they started with Barry Allen, because it's like a Jeff Johns mandate, I think. I really am starting to like think that Jeff Johns had something in his contract where all the movies had to be based on his material, because you look at every DC movie post the Nolan era, everything is based off of his work. Green Lantern is based off of his work loosely. Man of Steel is pulling very heavily off of Superman's Secret Origin. You know, I mean, there's a lot of stuff from, like, you know, Birthright and John Byrne's Man of Steel, and even a lot of the Donner stuff is in there too. But a lot of the stuff with Clark as a kid growing up in Smallville and being bullied, that all comes straight from Jeff Johns. Then you get Batman v Superman, and that's pulling off of, or I guess pulling from, thematically and tonally, a lot of Jeff Johns and Jim Lee's run on the Justice League. And then there's like the Shazam movie, which is literally just the Shazam origin in the New 52. Aquaman is literally the Jeff Johns Aquaman run from the New 52, but just truncated into 1 2-hour film. Zack Snyder's Justice League is just a second draft of the first arc of the New 52 Justice League. Sorry, I'm still a little sick. But I don't know, is there something in Jeff Johns' contract that says all the movies have to be adaptations of his work? Is there a contract out there somewhere? Because I'm like, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird that it's all on John stuff. But I'd say that just because Jeff Johns is the one who brought Barry Allen back, and Jeff Johns is the one who had this major push to have Barry Allen be the Flash across all media. So that's why Barry Allen just dominates everything, even though Wally West is like the de facto Flash for, like, I'd say a whole generation, or 2 whole generations of that. But I mean, hopefully we'll see the James Gunn DC universe. They do something with Wally West. That'd be cool. I hope. Any opinions on Nemesis Reborn? I have not read Nemesis Reborn, because, actually, you know, fuck it, I'll just... Alright, next book. Because I hadn't read Nemesis yet. I really like Nemesis. This is a book that I knew a lot about, but never actually read before this week. And, again, in fact, I don't think I said this on stream. I think I said this in my head, but not to you guys. And if I did say it to you guys, well, then the voices in my head are confusing me. But I just want to say I love that you guys watch me. I love being watched on the internet. It really fuels my, like, shallow ego. But don't take me at my word. Do not take me at my word. All I can offer are my opinions on comics, but I am not, like, the authority on comics. I'm just some guy who likes to read things and tell you what I think about them. Sorry. I say that because there are so many comics that I just avoided reading growing up because people like Linkara or Comic Pop or I'm blanking on all the big comic book review guys that I watched growing up. Geekvolution. There's just a lot of people on the internet that I watched growing up who said this comic is stupid and bad, and the internet kind of just around them, like the comics culture or geek culture, like around them, like just kind of repeated that, and then it got ingrained in me that there are books that are just really bad that I just didn't read for the longest time. And then I do read them for myself, and I'm like, holy shit, this is good. Like, I had that with Identity Crisis. I read Identity Crisis as a kid. I thought it was really cool back then, but then the internet said that it was bad, and I was wrong for liking it. So then I didn't read it for a long time. But I read it again recently, and I was like, no, this book is fire. This book fucks. No, what are you talking about? I mean, if you're a big, Justice League International fan, sorry, but like I'm not. I don't care about that Justice League iteration. I don't care about corny comedy Justice League. I care about real Justice League. So I love Identity Crisis. I think it's great. Everything that Mark Millar's written, people generally seem to hate, and I don't know what they're smoking. I think Superior is fantastic. I think Kick-Ass is amazing. I think Nemesis is great. So just be wary of what people on the internet say, because sometimes motherfuckers are just talking out their ass. They just are. And just, I mean, I know you guys are smart. You guys are, but just in case anyone hears me say something about a book that I like or didn't like, always go and inform your own opinion. Because I didn't do this with Nemesis. I just kind of went off the whole thing of well, Mark Millar's an edgelord, and this is what happens. Like the whole thing with the twin sister's womb collapsing because evil Batman impregnated her with her brother's semen. It's I mean, it's just stuff that sounds so off the wall and disgusting and terrible, but then you read it and it's amazing. This is one of the greatest comics I've read. This it's hilarious. It's funny. It's it's ultra violent and ultra edgelord, but it earns it. It really does earn it. And I had a lot of fun reading this. This is another fantastic read by Mark Millar, and yeah, guys, I'm excited to check out Nemesis Reloaded. So those are my thoughts on Nemesis Reloaded. I haven't read it yet, but I read Nemesis and I thought it was fucking great. So Superior is amazing. Oh yeah, dude. That's another one I read semi-recently. I read it a year ago. But I read it semi-recently and I thought it was fantastic. The best Shazam movie never made. Oh, give me one second, guys. All right. Supreme says, question, why the 90s get derided as the bad decade for comics? Not everything was Liefeld and the Clone Saga. There's a lot of gems in the 90s. Well, for the same reason we were just talking about the hate that Mark Millar gets, I think a lot of it is the fact that there were a lot of YouTube channels that got really popular throughout the early to mid 2000s and late 2000s. A lot of those guys read the popular stuff, which was terrible. Or at the very least, they had that hipster mentality of it's not League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, so it's obviously terrible. Oh my god, it's so gaudy, it's so stupid. And then that just becomes that becomes the doctrine within geek culture. That becomes the doctrine within the comic sphere to just say 90s comics are bad because these authorities of comics over there said that they're bad. When really you go back and there's a lot of great shit in the 90s. There's a lot of great shit in the 90s. Infinity Gauntlet is the 90s. In fact, a lot of the Thanos stuff that Jim Starlin does after Infinity Gauntlet, and with Adam Warlock and Infinity Watch. Wait, or I think that's Jim Starlin. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it's Jim Starlin. But a lot of that stuff is 90s. JLA by Grant Morrison and Howard Porter. Grant Morrison comes in and fixes the Justice League. That's a 90s comic, baby. JLA is a 90s comic book. Doom Patrol by Rachel Pollack. That's the 90s. Hellblazer. Garth Ennis takes over Hellblazer in like the early 90s. I think Garth Ennis' run on Hellblazer is the definitive run on that character. If there's going to be like a definitive run on Hellblazer, I would consider it to be the Garth Ennis run. Sandman is 90s. You know, a bunch of the Vertigo stuff like Death, also by Neil Gaiman, 90s. And I think Colleen Doran does the artwork for Death. I don't know. I could be mistaken there, but I think it's Colleen Doran. Mark Waid's run on The Flash with Greg LaRocque is quintessential 90s, and I'd say quintessential Flash. So there's a lot of really good stuff, and that's just Marvel and DC. We haven't talked about Madman, which is under Image. We haven't talked about Stormwatch when Warren Ellis takes over that book, and that leads into all the stuff with the Authority and Planetary. There's also Hellboy by Mike Mignola and the Mignolaverse spinning out under the Dark Horse imprint. Also, like the 90s Star Wars comics, also under Dark Horse. So just when people say 90s comics bad, I'm like, okay, well, congratulations for telling me that you only read Spawn and Clone Saga. Good for you. But nah, bro, the 90s has a lot of gems in it. Like I don't understand. Like if it's one of those where like, even if you like have like just a baseline frame, like just a hint of a frame of reference for like what came out in the 90s, you wouldn't say that. I don't get it. I don't get it. But again, I feel like it's just one of those things where people on the internet said 90s comics bad, so everyone started saying 90s comics bad, but they're not bad. In fact, 90s comics are pretty fucking awesome. That's just where it's at, bro. That's just where it's at. W says, question. I was just wondering, how do you feel about the Guardians of the Galaxy movie? Shut up! I haven't seen it yet. I will see it this weekend. I was just very sick over the past week. I couldn't see it, but I am going to see it. Batman vs Superman was Frank Miller and Dan Jurgens' Death of Superman. Yeah, it was that too. But it was also a lot of Batman War Games and a lot of DC New Frontier. Like, there's a lot of DC New Frontier in that movie that I don't think gets picked up on. Supreme says, on the DCEU, do you feel Snyder got too much blame and hate for his the things that went wrong? Because a lot of the materials adapted is from Johns. I think there's a lot at play there. Oof. I think the DCEU is doomed from the point where Zack Snyder wants to make a sequel to Man of Steel and the producers want to rush into making a Batman vs Superman movie. Because that's like the big thing. Zack Snyder wanted to make a sequel involving like Intergang and Metallo, and then he wanted to have a post-credit scene where a bunch of Kryptonite arrives at the Batcave and Bruce and Alfred open it up, and then that morphed into the sequel to Man of Steel, which is BVS. So like that is That's where I think they made the first mistake. And then everything else after that is just like a series of just fuck you doing, fuck you doing, fuck you doing. I mean, I like a lot of the stuff in the DCEU on a concept level, but just execution wise, fuck you doing. Like, you know. But I don't think a lot of that is Zack Snyder's fault. Movie making is that's a team effort. It takes an army to produce a film, and you know, I just think the wrong choices were made, and I think Zack Snyder did really good with what he had to work with, generally. In fact, I think he even improved on some of the stuff that he had to work with. Like, hey, make a Justice League movie that's based off of the really shitty 2011 Justice League Origin comic? Okay. How that managed to be as good as it was, I have no idea. But, dude, fuck it. That movie rocks. Also, it's the closest thing we're probably ever going to get to an adaptation of Rock of Ages, and that hurts on some level, but still really cool. It's better than the 2017 version, yeah. That's not a high bar though. That's like saying, yeah, I put my penis in a piranha's mouth, and it was worse, or I guess not worse than the buzzsaw. It's like I guess. I thought that was Dan DiDio who wanted Barry Allen to be front and center. Yes, you're right. Yeah, my bad. I can't blame that on Jeff Johns. But Jeff Johns did write a lot of Barry Allen material, and he followed those orders. Supreme Omega says early 2000s prime era Mark Miller is basically Slim Shady era Eminem. Ultimates 1 and 2 are basically Marshall Mathers LP of comics. That satirical angry white boy energy. Fuck it, that's a banger. That's a banger. Pinned. Absolute banger. Nothing but truth on that. Nothing but truth. Oh, shit, that's hilarious. Mark Miller's the Eminem of comics. Oh, that's hilarious. It's so fucking true, though. Wait, so does that make Grant Morrison Dr. Dre? Because now all I can imagine is, like, Grant Morrison in blackface talking like this. Oh, man. So, like, I'm trying to think. What's Relapse, then? Because I don't know, I feel like Civil War might be Relapse. Yeah, Civil War is Relapse, and the later Ultimate Universe stuff is Recovery. Yeah. Oh man, then. Yeah, dude, fuck. That was brilliant. That was absolutely brilliant. I couldn't put that better myself. Timmy says, I wasn't a fan of Nemesis mostly because it was mean-spirited and super 90s extreme and graphic. Really? I mean, I feel you on it being graphic, but like I don't see this being in the 90s at all. I still think the 90s is when we're trying to do like Claremont's X-Men, but like with bone spikes and leather jackets. Like I think that's what the '90s is. 2000s is when we just kind of hit the that's the era of MTV. You know, that's the era of all those like raunchy comedy movies. Like I feel like this is like the reaction to like shit post culture, or I guess early shit post culture. I mean, this comic is like just one big shit post about like, what if Batman was like actually evil though? Yeah, man. Yeah, this comic's great. I mean, I get why you're not into it, and that's fair. It is very mean spirited. But Mark Miller just kind of tends to be mean spirited when he's not tackling like actual superheroes. That's just how he writes. Yeah, Superior's really good. Toby says mostly I'm a fan of Captain Marvel and the Marvel family, so taking that concept of that story and doing it realistically was interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's what I really liked about it. I wouldn't really consider it any more realistic than a wizard showing up and telling a young little boy to like let me come inside of you and give you powers. If I come inside, you'll be a big boy. There's a lot of weird stuff with the Wizard of Shazam there, but yeah, I don't know. Just, all they did was replace the wizard with a demon. You know, I still thought it was really cool though. It's just like an interesting like twist on the mythology there. Oh, actually, speaking of Shazam, I picked up. This is the Dan Mora cover of Shazam #1. This came out like I think 2 weeks ago. I really enjoyed it. I really like how Mark Miller, not Mark Miller, Jesus Christ. I really like how Mark Waid just kind of hits the ground running and saying like, "Yo, this is classic Captain Marvel." Like he even gives him back the Captain name, or I guess Captain moniker, in kind of like a humorous fashion, but still he's the Captain now. You know, they're not doing that weird Shazam shit. I still don't know why they have to call him Shazam. Like I don't get that. Like from what I understand, Marvel doesn't they don't own the name Captain Marvel, or at the very least, they don't own it to the point where like you can't have characters address him as Captain Marvel. Like you can't call the book Captain Marvel; you have to call it Shazam. But yeah, I thought you could still call it, or call the character at least Captain Marvel. But I don't know. I'm cool with the Captain though. That's fine. But yeah, this art by Dan Mora is like just absolutely breathtaking. Dan Mora is like the absolute GOAT. I love this dude. His work is absolutely unparalleled. For the longest time, I really wish he wrote, or I guess drew Superman, but honestly, like I think he works better with Captain Marvel. They're still kind of approaching the Captain Marvel Shazam, or I guess okay, fuck it. They're approaching the Captain Marvel and Billy Batson dynamic, as if it's Billy just in a grown-up's body, which is not really how that was originally. Before they were just like two different entities. and then they would like share space time. So, I don't know. It's interesting though. Seeing what Mark Miller, fuck, I did it again. What Mark Waid's doing with the status quo, and I thought this last page reveal was really interesting. He just goes like full Homelander. Just like, just Steven Crowder's this poor woman after she tries to like ask him for help, or no, thank him for helping her. Like, just absolutely hilarious. So, I'm interested to see where this goes, and yeah, it's a great Shazam comic. Like, I don't know, I'm into it. I really liked it. It was also like kind of weirdly refreshing reading this after having read this over the course of like a week. Because like, holy shit, as much as I like this, you know, it's nice to have this back too. It's cool to have your deconstructionist like meat and potatoes, but I also just like the, you know, I like the tapioca, you know. I like the boba. It's really fun. This is good boba. I love Mark Waid's run on the Flash. It's fantastic. Me too. Spawn, Youngblood. Yeah, but like Spawn and Youngblood, they were popular in the 90s, but like they didn't make up the entirety of the 90s. Toby says, I think this people also don't like the 90s because of the speculator bubble, which caused the comic book industry to collapse. That's true, but if we're gonna be completely 100% honest in that, the speculator bubble burst because of business practices that were put in place in the 80s. The 80s is where a lot of the problems that we see in comics right now were founded. The 90s is just where shit hit the fan. And again, I don't think blaming like a whole era of comics on the consequences of like corporate actions. I just don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair to blame the stories for like the business end of things, especially like amidst like a toxic corporate climate that was starting to like dig its nails into the lungs of comics in that time period. Movie making is super complicated, absolutely. And superhero movie making is like 1,000 times more arduous and bullshit. Hated the New 52 Justice League, yeah, totally bad. How do you feel about the writer strike? I hope writers get paid. Because I feel like that's not even something that should be. Why do I have to say that? Yeah, writers should be paid proportionally. It's almost like a film is like a house, right? And the foundation is the script. The screenwriter should be paid handsomely for that script that they are working on, or that they did work on, spent, countless hours and blood, sweat, and tears pouring into it. Fuck it. Like, Hollywood's all run by like weird Illuminati demons, so like of course, it's like a not totally well-oiled machine. Like, yeah, they're pedophiles that are just winging it. So, you want to get paid? Sure, let me just bump this coke and have sex. No, rape this 9-year-old on this island over here, and then I'll pay you. No, dude, like. That's how Hollywood runs. So just, it's shitty. It's really shitty, but I do hope the strike does lead to a nice, just solution. If we're gonna keep working within the same toxic framework, Ultimate X-Men is Shrimps Lady LP. Ultimates 1 and 2 is Marshall Mathers LP and Eminem Show. Civil War is Encore. I can see that. I can see that. Except I don't hate Civil War. That's that's like my one thing. I don't hate Civil War. I think it's a little undercooked, but I don't hate it. I mean, I don't hate Encore either. But at least I go back and read Civil War again. Like, I haven't listened to Encore. I don't even... Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, there's like nothing in Encore that I've like gone back and listened to. Spend some time. Ass Like That. Like Toy Soldiers. Actually, like, okay, Toy Soldiers is alright. Puke. Love You More. Evil Deeds. Yellow Brick Road. Never Enough. We Was Americans. Big Weenie. Mockingbird. Mosh, Rain Man, First Single, Ricky Tikki Taka. Yeah, just none of these are. Yeah, nah. Like again, I'd go back and read Civil War. I have not listened to anything from Encore. But I see why someone would make that comparison, though. Because I know a lot of people don't like Civil War. Shazam, but number one, Mark Waid finally bringing back Captain Marvel makes me happy. Me too, man. Me too. Dan Mora is fantastic. Arcus supplies some wisdom. They have to call him Shazam because an entire generation of fans have grew up on the Shazam name, and with Injustice and the movie, it became public perception as a brand. Well, that sucks. I hate that. Yeah, Miracle Man's weird. Yeah, it's great though. It's great. It's weird, but it's great. I love it. I had no idea that the 80s caused those problems. Yeah, a lot of problems. I mean, and it's just like I have a whole thing where like I'm like really into history. That was like almost my major for a long time. A lot of problems that are burdened onto a decade typically start a decade and a half prior, right? So like when we think of, say, the civil rights movement in the 60s, right? Well, the civil rights movement is actually the culmination of events and protests and legal battles from the 1930s onward. You know, the 60s is just where shit popped off, and everyone was like watching the world around everyone, like everyone around the world was watching everything pop off. But the civil rights movement started, at least in America. The American civil rights movement started in like the like late 20s, early 30s. When people talk about the whole situation with anti-Muslim racism, and like 9/11, and like everything that we kind of like think of when we think of the early 2000s in America, a lot of that stuff starts in the 80s. Really the late 70s. But yeah, a lot of that stuff starts in the 80s when the CIA is like training the Mujahideen as like a fuck you to Russia and the KGB and the USSR, because they very much wanted so at the time the USSR was trying to take Afghanistan, and the US was like, well, that would put us in a really shitty predicament, so let's train these rebels over here to combat them, and let's have Afghanistan be the USSR's or the Soviet Union's Vietnam, or I guess equivalent to what like Vietnam was to America, which worked. It just kind of spiraled into everything that we see now. So, you know, with comics, you know, I guess taking a step back and going back to comics, a lot of the problems we see in comics right now, or I guess from the 90s onward, are problems that have roots in the late 70s, early 80s. And a lot of problems that comics had in the 80s, in the 70s, like, for example, the reason why comics in America are so they are so beholden to Marvel and DC and superheroes as a genre. A lot of that stems out of the Wortham trials. Not really the Wortham trials, but like, you know, Frederick Wortham, the corruption of the innocent, and the comics hearings throughout the late 50s, I think, into the mid 60s. So that's just where I always say, like, problems don't start where people often think they start. They actually have their roots, like, they go all the way back. Like, even the starting point isn't really the starting point. Just so I said, are you a QAnoner? No, I'm not a QAnoner. Civil War II is even worse than the OG Civil War, which I had no idea was possible. Well, the OG Civil War at least has like really interesting ideas. The biggest problem Civil War has is that it was an event that choked on the tie-ins and being massively delayed, which no one remembers anymore, but was a real problem for the tie-ins, because there was just no communication between Mark Miller and some of the other writers and artists and editors with some of the other books. So there's no consistency, like, narrative wise, in what the Negative Zone prison is supposed to look like, or who is actually dead after certain battles, how long the war is actually going on for, because the book got delayed massively. So the Civil War comic, it has a lot of problems, but I still think at its core there's a really good idea there. It's a really interesting concept. And I like how it's not an easy, like, well, this is a good guy, this is the bad guy. You know, this one's right, this one's wrong. I mean, very clearly, I think Iron Man's right. Right? Has it been long enough to just admit that Tony Stark was right? Because he was. Before things went south and sour, and Tony may have definitely 100% overstepped his boundaries a little bit. When he did the whole Clone Thor thing with Reed and Giant Man. But, yeah, I think Tony was definitely in the right when he proposed that superheroes get shield training instead of just running around as assholes and tearing up major metropolitan areas in, like, smackdown, drag out, super powered street fights. I think Tony Stark was right. I don't know what you want me to say. And I really think that Captain America reacted like a complete psychopath about it. Like, when Cap... Okay, and this is all... To be fair, though, this isn't Cap's fault entirely. Maria Hill definitely escalates the situation needlessly, which is part of the reason why I did not like Maria Hill for the longest time. But Cap was overreacting to Maria Hill overreacting, which then prompted Tony Stark to overreact. So really, this whole thing is Maria Hill's fault. Yeah, I think Civil War has an interesting premise behind it. I can't say the same for Civil War 2. And that's it. Arcus says the new Superman lost issue is Superman being a confused little puppy again. No tension, no stakes, no nothing. Oh damn, really? I haven't read it yet. I actually didn't get it this week. It's still in my box. But I don't know. Well, it's a 12-issue series. We'll see where it goes. I liked issues 1 and 2. I can say that. Adventures of John Kent, Superman and Superman. Adventures of John Kent, Superman, and Superman have two things in common. They are also boring, and plus proves to me that both series aren't interesting. Well, shit, man. I mean, I liked the first arc of the Joshua Williamson Superman book. I thought that was really fun. But damn, I mean, sorry you didn't like it. The John Kent book, I don't want to say I dislike Tom Taylor. I have not enjoyed his Superman, though. Can't say I've enjoyed his Superman. Super Omega says, on the early 2000s, I miss that era of pop culture, whether it's comics, music, etc. The whole satirical, let's offend everyone energy. Peak South Park, Slim Shady, and Ultimate Marvel. Yeah, and we just don't do that anymore. We don't have the balls to do that anymore. Because we'll offend somebody. Adventures of John Kent and Superman. Oh, you said that already. Had a birthday. Oh, happy birthday, Arcus! Yo, happy birthday, dude! Yo! Let's all sing happy birthday to Arcus. Happy birthday. We hope it is fun. Happy birthday. You are the one. Jump in the fire. Do it. Jump in the fire. Jump in the fire. You don't actually have to jump in the fire, but you know. Happy birthday, Arcus. Oh, my beanie just got all rocked off. Arcus, you naughty subscriber, you knocked off my beanie. Happy birthday. Can you give me a present? Just admit that Snyder's take on Superman was bad. No biggie. I will give you a prostate exam in the middle of the Disney World little castle thing. I'll live stream that before I say that Zack Snyder's Superman is bad. Have fun though. Have fun on your birthday. But yeah, no dice, not happening. Supreme Omega says, I feel the problem with Mark Miller's Ultimates 1 and 2 is that too many people took it literally. Miller's intention was to update the celebrity culture of the Avengers for the MTV post-Columbine generation. Absolutely. And also, I guess to that, I would add, I don't think enough people realize that that is what Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were doing in the 60s with the Avengers. Like, I don't think enough people realize that the Marvel Universe was founded on satire. Like, it's all subversion and satirical politics. The Avengers is a satire of the superhero concept. Spider-Man is a satirical subversion of the superhero concept. Like, that's just what Marvel is, man. But I don't think... I think there's a disconnect. I think once you get to the generation who grew up on Marvel Comics, writing Marvel Comics, that's when Marvel Comics just kind of becomes like DC 2.0. I think that's when, you know, that generation that grew up on Marvel Comics and loving those characters, but like earnestly, they kind of missed the point in that a lot of these characters are designed to be like piss takers. Like the X-Men are poking fun at the idea of people with like insane superpowers living in the real world because that couldn't happen, you know? Or like if a character looked like Metamorpho, for example, well, people aren't going to like applaud him in the streets. It's gonna be like Ben Grimm saving a cat out of a tree. They're gonna freak out and throw tomatoes at him because he looks like a monster, you know. Or like, you know, where Superman will battle Metallo or the Parasite in the crowded city streets of Metropolis, and then Superman defeats him by outsmarting him and outwitting him. Everyone and their mother gives the claps and they say, "Oh, good job, Superman! You did such a goody." No, if Spider-Man does that, you're gonna have some dude get out of a car and say, "What's wrong with you, boy? What? No, I'm late for work. I hate you. You're a terrible superhero. Go die in a fire." Like, sir, he saved your life. I don't care. Well, I'm late for work. I might as well lose my life. Like, that's what Marvel was born out of. And you don't see that anymore? Like, you just don't? And I don't know, man. When people kind of talk about Mark Miller's Ultimates as being, oh, like, it's just so cynical. And it's just like such a shitpost take on superheroes as a concept. It's like, yeah, Doy. What do you think Jack Stan and Don Heck were doing back in the 60s? Writing Superman stories? Like, no, fuck off. Like, I don't know. That's... oh, that shit just gets me. Debbie says, question. Speaking Ultimate Marvel, do you believe Ultimate Invasion will bring back the Ultimate Universe, or will it lead to nothing? Yes. I don't know, man. I really don't know. I want the Ultimate Universe to come back, but the version of the Ultimate Universe that I want to come back, I don't think can come back for the reasons I just said. Why I think Marvel is just kind of turned into like discount baby DC for the past 25 years. It'd be cool, but like if it came back, it wouldn't be Ultimate Marvel. Until Tony went too far. Well, yes, until Tony went too far. It's still Marie Hill's fault, though. Supreme Omega says, on Civil War, when I was younger, I loved Peter revealing his secret identity. I hate that it got undone. I still think you could have done something interesting with it. I still think something interesting could have been done with it, but... No, we got Civil War instead. No, not Civil War. We got One More Day instead. Which is just Spider-Man Civil War for the fan base. That is. I was supposed to say Superman Lost, not Joshua Williamson Superman. Oh yeah, the Williamson run's really good. Superman Lost is just one of those books I think is going to read way better collected, though. Beanie, Tony Stark would be right if it was the real world, but in comics, it's all about the moral high ground, where he was wrong because comic book politics are idealistic and not practical. I mean, yeah, but the Marvel Universe is, like, supposed to be practical, or I guess, like more practical. Look, if Marvel wants to fucking shoot out their dick the whole, like, it's the world outside your window, like, yeah, I'm gonna take it on the terms of it being the world outside my window. And yeah, Tony Stark's right. Yeah, but put on them jack boots and do what Uncle Sam tells you to do. Yeah, get that training, boy. I mean, it's kind of hilarious because there were some bits of dialogue that I don't think aged great. Or I guess not didn't age great. Aged fantastically if you're looking at it through like a shitpost kind of lens. Because there's a line specifically where Tony Stark says, well, we don't want you to be soldiers, but cops have training, so you'd basically just be super cops. That reads different in 2022 than it did in 2006. I mean, shit, man, that reads like different in 2023 than it did in 2016. Like, it's... Oh, man, that's hilarious. But yeah, I mean, Tony was right. I mean, building the prison's kind of messed up, but Still right. Yeah, man, of course, yeah. Happy birthday. Toby says, do you believe Marvel will grow up and trapped with this garbage? Well, I don't think Spidey's just the only one. I think one of the biggest problems Marvel has faced and hasn't quite healed from is the addiction to the status quo. Which, again, I really think starts in the 80s. I think that's a Jim Shooter era, like, mandate that Marvel's just, like, upheld. I get where it comes from. You know, every comic is somebody's first, but it gets to a point where going back to a familiar status quo just completely eradicates any stakes. It completely eviscerates that feeling of progress on like a character level. I feel like these characters are just kind of running in circles as opposed to like actually learning and growing like they did throughout the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and well into the early to mid 80s, I'd say. But just in regards to Spider-Man, that character, he already grew up. You can't put the genie back in the bottle and say, no, he's a baby boy. No, this baby boy is 35 years old. This baby boy almost had a baby girl in the 90s. His wife had a miscarriage. Wife. He was married. And almost had a kid. Like, it's okay to say that Peter Parker's in his mid-30s now. It's okay to just say that. I mean, Marvel's okay with saying that with the X-Men. So, I mean, why can't we say that with Peter? I don't know. Then again, it always just goes back to that, like, fundamental misunderstanding that I think a lot of Marvel editors have of not just the overall Marvel brand, but Spider-Man in particular. Spider-Man is not the story of a kid playing superhero. Spider-Man is the story of a kid growing into a man because he's a superhero. And I mean, we watched him grow into like adulthood, and we watched him have a regression of character, which does happen in the real world. That does happen to people. You know, something happens. You know, they get evicted. They lose their job, they lose their wife, they lose a kid, sometimes all of the above, and it will take a 29-year-old man back to being 12 years old. It happens. And I know, because I've seen it happen to people, and it is terrifying. But, I mean, Marvel didn't even, like, take that angle with Peter. They just kind of started him back at being the status quo that he was at like the beginning of the 80s. So, man, I don't know. Great timing with the light coming off and on that monologue. Thanks, man. I mean, I try to time it, but it's random. Beanie, I think you overthink the whole Marvel being subversive and satirical from the beginning. Really, it was the original trying to be realistic stick. You can't build a long-term... you can't build a long story on subversion. But they weren't thinking in terms of, like they weren't thinking, like, years ahead in that time period. They were just thinking, like, what would be cool. And at the time, what was cool was, let's do what DC isn't doing. Let's do the opposite of what they're doing. I mean, I think it was, like, I think the big sell is to say it's realistic. You know, it's the world outside your window. But no, dude, those stories were satirical. Like there's an edge to them. Like in the same way that like Nemesis has an edge to it. You know, in the same way that like Ultimates has like a satirical comedic edge to it. A lot of those like comics in the 60s under the Marvel imprint, there's a satirical edge to it, you know? They know they're being funny, and they know when they're being funny. I don't think I'm giving them too much credit. I don't think I'm overthinking it there. Like I legitimately do think that there's a lot of like subversion of like traditional superhero tropes. They even comment on it too. I know, or at the very least, I know Stan Lee would, because Stan Lee didn't fucking trust his artist at all. So he would just spell things out with characters or with narration boxes. One in particular that I reminded of is the Daily Bugle gets attacked. I can't remember who attacked the Daily Bugle. I think it was the Living Brain? No, it wasn't the Living Brain. Was it Scorpion? I don't remember. But the Daily Bugle gets attacked, and it ends with Peter wrapping his arm around Betty Brant, and Stan Lee just has this like egregious like wall of text that reads like something like, well, this is a very typical ending for a superhero story, but Spider-Man's not a typical superhero because he's supposed to be the dork. And next time we're gonna see how much of a dork he is, and how much of a virgin dork he is, and how he's an incel actually. So yeah, no, like it's not like they weren't aware of what they were doing. It was intentional. Like Superman loss will be better in trade. Oh, absolutely. I think it will too. I think Christopher Priest just in general tends to read better in trade. Like I love his Deadpool run under Deadpool Rebirth, but it reads 1,000 times better in trade. The whole thing with the Lazarus contract is still stupid though. I didn't like that at all. That was dumb. But outside of that, everything else is pretty cool. Back in Black was good. As far as I'm concerned, that is JMS's final word on Spidey, where Peter is paranoid with a dying Aunt May and declining marriage, and the world is against him. I mean, that's where Spider-Man kind of ends for me. That's the last that's the last Peter Parker story. I feel like that's where Peter Parker, the Peter Parker that we see from like 1961 in Amazing Fantasy 15 up to that point, that's the end of that character. Then I see the John Constantine from Swamp Thing. That character dies with Hellblazer 500. Like after the Hellblazer series is over, John Constantine is done. Like the character that we see now is like John. He is John Light, but he's not the Hellblazer. You know? Even if you think about it, Superman lost and John getting lost are the same exact thing. Except the difference is Priest at least gets this concept with Clark way more than Bendis did with my boy. Interesting. Still annoyed that the Ultraman plot got thrown out the window for the Injustice Superman storyline, which is just a waste of time from the beginning. Oh, they got rid of Ultraman? That sucks. Oh, alright. Good night, Tevya. Stan Lee's True Believers catchphrase in the 60s. Marvel is rooted in ironic satire. Poking at DC with the brand Ech is basically a diss track. Yeah. Absolutely. On Classic Milestone, do you feel that it's the 90s hip-hop version of Marvel? I feel like the comics that were commenting on the LA riots, whole feast, no, the whole East and West Coast feud, East and West Coast feud. It is 90s hip hop Marvel, but also 90s hip hop DC. In an age where DC is like kind of turning into like a weird, like, avant-garde crackhead. So like, it's 90s hip hop Marvel meets a Silver Age classic DC that kind of fell apart and doesn't exist anymore. That's what Milestone is. Or I guess was, much rather. Because Milestone just... Ugh. Dude, that new stuff's not good. Like, holy shit. It's really not good. It's giving... Be careful what you wish for energy. Because here I was, for years, hoping that DC would revitalize the Milestone brand, and then we finally get it, and holy shit. Why? Why? Just all of the decisions that are being made. Why? There is so much to do with these characters. There's so much to do with this world right now. What is this? What are we getting right now? Just damn. That's all I gotta say. Damn. I don't feel like you can recapture the feel of the classic comics. McDuffie was the creative soul. Yeah. And without doing McDuffie, it's just not Milestone. I'm sorry. It just ain't. But I mean, I'm still open to the idea of Milestone, like, kind of working down the line. It's just, I don't think this current... I think we should just, like, reboot Milestone again and forget that this reboot right now ever happened. In fact, I think it would be good if we just, like, completely DMC into Devil May Cry 5 did. We look at the current version of Milestone as, like, the DMC universe, and then we just go like, alright, anyways, let's go back to the classic Milestone universe. Let's bring that back. I'd be down for that. Oh. This is like the last of my comics that I got this week. I got Batman 135 finally. I read it online, but it was great to just, like, read it, like, on its own. This has been, like, one of my favorite Batman arcs in general. This is where I got off making that, like, clip for my last video, which is just campy Batman's way cooler than gritty Batman. Like, look at this shit. Batman is hanging off a cliff at the edge of the multiverse, and he's like, he sprays a shark that is trapped out of time and space with bat shark repellent. Well, Prime Earth Batman, Earth Zero Batman, is rocking a Dark Knight Returns blue Batman outfit with an Adam West belt. How is this not everything you've ever wanted out of a Batman comic? Like, this is just perfect, dog. It's brilliant. It's beautiful. This is the ultimate love letter to Batman. I love it, and it's a cool cover too. Yeah. What's wrong with the Milestone reboot though? I didn't read it. Whereas the original Milestone was very much steeped in the politics of the day, but they won, didn't allow the politics to like make the stories boring and uninteresting. And still told like really interesting, nuanced character stories. In the way that the stories themselves felt fresh and interesting and relevant. The current Milestone just doesn't. They range from feeling derivative of what came before, and at worst just like weirdly preachy and not good at all, just like missing the point of some of those characters entirely. I think you could have done something really interesting with a contemporary reboot of the Milestone universe, but they just didn't do that. So here we are. And the last book that I picked up this week is Vanish number 6. Again, I got the Daniel Warren Johnson cover because Daniel Warren Johnson is an absolute beast. Although not my favorite Johnson cover. I've liked some of the other ones he's done in the past a little better, but this is still really cool. We're seeing like in the back of a police cruiser, we got like the donut hanging off there in the back. That's pretty funny. You know what's weird? Never seen cops eat donuts. Maybe that's just like a thing where they feel some kind of way about that, and they feel like, I don't know, ashamed. Like it's a stereotype. Like black people with watermelon, or, you know, Native Americans talking like this in the wind. Because none of my cousins do that. Although a lot of them do have the thing where they speak slow, but they try not to speak like they're William Shatner standing in the wind at a reservation. But they never try to do that. They always avoid doing that. Especially the ones who have like the same kind of speech impediment that I have. Fuck, how did I get on that? I don't remember. Anyways, Vanish is great. Issue 6 is where like some of the shit really kind of popped off. We're finally starting to see like we're starting to see like how things are like shaping up, how things are coming together. We're starting to see like some of Oliver's consequences catch up with him, and how he's not the hero of the story that he sees himself as being. So I'm interested to see where this all goes. I like this series so far. It's one of my favorites, and yeah, I just hope it doesn't lose steam. That's it. Those are the comics I read this week. Supreme Omega says, 90s comics, nobody talks about what a golden age DC was having. 90s DC feels practically almost modern image-esque. Yeah, dude, absolutely. 90s DC was peak. Like, I don't know. I think the problem is that no one was reading DC because DC is number 2. Nobody cares about number 2. They only care about number 1, and number 1 was failing. Therefore, everyone else was failing. Do you feel critics focus too much on an artist's peak era, aka their Imperial phase? Because I feel like Bendis still did good work even after his early 2000s peak. I just don't know how you ignore it. Like, if you can tell when an artist peaked, well then, like, I don't know how you ignore that. I don't know how you read, like something like Event Leviathan and not think to yourself, holy shit, this guy wrote Ultimate Spider-Man issue 13, which is like one of the greatest single issue comics ever written. And it's nothing but just like 2 people in a room talking for 22 pages. Actually, no, probably close to like 30 pages back then, because this is before like the page count got dwindled. So I can't turn my brain off of the fact that like that guy wrote Event Leviathan. You know, I can't turn my brain off of the fact that, like, you know, I read like the latter third of Tom King's run on Batman, and I'm thinking, oh man, this guy wrote Vision. How the fuck is this the same guy? Like, what? Like, I think it's hard to ignore that. I really think it's hard to ignore that. Because a lot of people are coasting off of good faith with the fact that they were the guy at one point in time. Now they're not the guy. You know, I just think it's hard to ignore. But I don't know. I think artists change over time, you know, and I think writers definitely tend to switch up their styles. And sometimes it's for the better, sometimes it's for worse, but, you know, that's just part of the artistic process, you know? And I can't hate it. I can't hate on it, you know? It just be like that. It'd be how it be. But yeah, guys, I'm going to say goodnight. Because as you can still probably hear my voice, I still got a little bit of the ick in me, you know, not too terrible, just like talking a lot is not good for my voice probably. So yeah, guys, thanks for watching, thanks for coming by. Again, happy birthday, Arcus. Prostate exam, that offer still on the table. Just I'm not gonna diss Snyder's Superman, but thanks for watching, guys. If you haven't already, hit the like button, you know, and hopefully I'll see you in the next stream, whatever that may be, whether it's a live stream like this or a video game stream, I don't know. I'll see you guys later. Adios, nachos. Adios.